Today we're talking about absolute values. So the absolute value, that's an E. The absolute value of a number is the distance between the number and 0 on a number line. Um, so it's however many spaces that number is from 0 if you were looking at a number line. Now the way that we always do absolute values, it looks kind of like parentheses, but instead the parentheses are completely straight up and down. So if they are not perfectly straight, it is not absolute value. And we'll just see a number on the inside, and that will tell us to take the absolute value of that number. So an example is I want the absolute value of 3. So here's 3 on my number line. Here's 0. I need to see how many spaces is it. 1, 2, 3. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. Now, there's a couple things that you need to know about this. First of all, it is pretty much always the positive version of the number. So if it's positive, like the example we just saw, it's still positive. If it was originally negative, it becomes positive. It's always positive. Sometimes there will be like more of a problem for you to solve inside of the absolute value signs. So we are going to treat it like parentheses. So it's going to go first. So always do the absolute value part first, like what's on the inside, and then make a positive. So looking at some examples, the absolute value of negative 4, it's just 4, because remember it's just the positive version of the number. Absolute value of 9 is 9. Again, positive version. So that would mean it's 9 spaces from 0 on the number line. Here, again, we're going to kind of treat it like parentheses. If these were parentheses, it would be 9 times negative 7. So instead we're going to do 9 times the absolute value of negative 7, which is 7. 9 times 7 is 63. So all I did was I made that negative 7 a positive 7, since absolute value is always the positive version, and then multiply them. For number 4, I have absolute value of negative 7, which is 7, plus the absolute value of negative 3, which is 3, and 7 plus 3 is 10. Okay, look at little harder examples. Sometimes they'll give you a variable, and we're going to talk more about this tomorrow, but if they give you a variable, we're just going to take that variable and plug it in. So this negative 3 is going to replace this x. So we get 2 plus the absolute value of negative 3. I'm not going to do anything with this 2 because it's not in absolute value signs. Absolute value of negative 3 is 3, and 2 plus 3 is 5. Again, we see this variable, so we plug in 1 for the variable. So 3 minus absolute value of 1. And that's going to give us 3 minus absolute value of 1 is 1. 3 minus 1 is 2. Sometimes we will need to compare two integers. But before we get there, I wanted to do another example. So let's look at this number 7 that I'm going to write. What if you had the absolute value of negative 6 plus 2? Don't just automatically make that 6 a positive. We're going to solve what's on the inside first. So negative 6 plus 2 is a negative 4. And once you have it down to just one number, then you can take the absolute value. So the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. So always solve what's in the problem first, and then make it positive. Okay, now getting down to the bottom. We are comparing two integers. When we compare integers, we're going to use what's called an inequality, which we'll talk more about later this year. But inequality is just a symbol that compares numbers. So we have less than, which looks like this, greater than, and equal to. We already know what equal means, so we're just learning less than and greater than. So I need to write a symbol for these two numbers. So I need to think, is 2 less than 5, 2 greater than 5, or 2 equal to 5? Well, 2 is obviously less than 5, so I'm going to put 2 less than symbol 5. So math people don't like to write everything out, so we come up with symbols for things. So this tells me 2 is less than 5. Next we have -1 and 3. So I need to think, is -1 less than 3, greater than 3, or equal to 3? Well, it's less than because it's negative. So -1 is again less than 3. For part C, we have a little bit to solve before we can actually do anything. So I need to do the absolute value of -6 first, which is 6. So I'm really comparing 6 and 2. So I'm thinking it's 6 less than 2, greater than 2, or equal to. And it is greater than 2, so we put our greater than sign. Now at the bottom of this page, you can't see it on my screen, but it's at the bottom of your page, it says, remember the crocodile always eats the larger number. So some people like to think of these symbols as crocodiles. So if we went back to our 2 is less than 5, this is my crocodile, here are some teeth for it. So it's hungry, so it's going to eat the bigger number. So it's going towards the 5 because it's bigger. And then if I switch that to 6 is greater than 2, again we have our little crocodile, and it's hungry, so it's eating the bigger number. So it doesn't care about the 2, it cares about the bigger number. So always make sure your crocodile is going to always eat your bigger number. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to email me.